Hi, guys.
What's going on?
David Corsini from Coldwell Banker here.
Bill Halleck from the Southwest Financial Group.
Uh, During the next 10 weeks, we will be coming out with one video per week on our 10 steps to purchasing a home. This week, we will be focusing on how much you can afford. Number one mistake most people do when they decide, hey, Bill, I want to buy a house. I think I'm just going to go on Zillow and see what's on the market. Wrong. Number one mistake. What you could end up doing is looking at houses that you can't even afford.
And then you're wasting your time, and then eventually you might be wasting someone else's time going out and look at these places, and you're probably going to disappoint yourself if you've jumped the gun in your
Correct.
price point.
Or, on the flip side, you might not even realize you could afford more, and you're looking at houses that are inferior to your actual budget.
Correct. Yep.
So this brings us to our first step in what you can afford. Look at your credit report, not your credit score. What a lot of people do is they look at their credit score from, all the banks now, Discover, Citi, they'll give you a credit score. This is what your credit score is. Bill, you can go into this.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is, it might come from Karma.com, Credit Karma, or from one of your bank sites, for example. They're going to give you a credit report. It might even say FICO. It might even have the actual logo or brand name of FICO. The issue is those scores that you typically tend to see for free, for whatever reason, it must be some sort of different algorithm or something, tend to be higher than when we actually go ahead in the mortgage business and pull your credit report. Therefore, you may think your score is a 750, for example, and then when we actually pull it, it might come in at a 650. So to get the actual score that we're using when trying to do a mortgage is so important, because if you're off by 50, 100 points, it could completely change what program you would qualify for.
And not only program, Bill, probably your interest rate. I mean, you're probably looking, if it's 100-point difference, it could be half a point on your interest, which, amortized over 30 years is a significant amount.
Correct. So it's important to speak with someone. For example, a licensed mortgage loan originator has the ability, when doing a pre-qualification, to pull your true mortgage credit report that we're going to look at, that's going to actually be applicable when you actually try to buy a house. So it's good to do that, and then to see where you stand. A, get the score, and then B, really go through that report and look through it and figure out, are there anything on there that shouldn't be there? So, for example, some random medical collection for $100, let's say, could impact your score. And these are the kind of things you want to get cleared up prior to going out and shopping for a house, because you don't want to go through the process saying, oh, my credit's great, I take care of all my bills, I know my credit's fine, which may be true, but then something slips through the cracks, or maybe even somebody puts something on that's incorrect. Maybe you have the same name as someone else, a similar name to someone else, and all of a sudden this thing that isn't yours is now impacting your score, but because you waited, you now didn't know that until late in the game.
Right. So, purchasing a house is, pretty important. Trust professionals, okay? Which brings me to our next point. Set a budget. Really delve in, see what your monthly payments are for everything. Groceries, you have a car. I don't know if you went to college, but you probably have student loan debt. Everything that you pay for monthly, track it for at least the last month or two. All right? Really get an idea of how much you're paying each month. Obviously, if you're renting, you don't have to worry about that rent anymore, because you'll be purchasing a home and you'll have a mortgage payment instead. So you want to figure out how much room you have, to actually buy a home. Now, when you buy a home, your monthly payment won't just be the mortgage. It'll also be taxes, utilities, and insurance. And if you actually reach out to a mortgage broker, again, for this, they have tools to help you budget.
Yeah, correct. So when you do the credit report, in that process, we can actually put together this budget and work on that whole thing.
Yeah. Which brings us to our third point. Don't buy anything big. especially when you're under contract.
Yeah.
But when you first realize you want to buy a house, don't get a new car. Don't rent furniture. Don't decide you want to go back to school and start.
Oh, another good one is the old, what do you call it? Timeshare.
Yeah.
That's another no prior to closing is buying a timeshare.
Yeah, don't buy a timeshare. Don't
Also,
ever buy a timeshare.
Yeah, also, no after closing, but that's a different story.
So, when you start to realize you want to buy a home, don't incur any more debt. You know, credit cards, pay them off every month. Especially when you're under contract, what could end up happening, for example, you go to Bill, you go through the first 2 steps. Bill says, you know, you can afford a house for $500,000. Then you come to me, I show you the houses, we put in an offer, it gets accepted, and then you decide to go ahead and buy a new car, and you have a higher monthly payment than when Bill originally checked your finances. So that could actually hurt you, and you could end up not being able to buy that home.
Right, because if they check and do a rundown prior to closing on the credit and notice that the payment for the car is now $500 more or $150 more, whatever, and it throws your numbers off, you may no longer qualify, and now you're stuck in contract and have to get. It's not a good idea.
Okay, guys, that concludes our first step in the home buying process. Figure out how much you can afford. Have a good one.